Hello friends, we will be discussing today the May 2020 Direct Tax update, judicial updates. The first case in this line is the case of CIT versus Lakshman Das Khandelwal. We will be looking at this case law through an example first. So, what does an example say? News Limited has received a sum of rupees 604 crores during AY 1450 from subsidiaries, which was disclosed during the assessment under section 143(3) of the Act. For the purpose of reassessment, AO issued notice under section 148 dated 29/3/2019 requiring the assessee to furnish a return of income. Right? Situation 1. Now we are taking situation number 1. What it says? Notice under section 148 was received by the assessee on 4/4/2019. He filed a return in response to the said notice. No notice under section 143(2) was issued, which was evident from the order sheet. On 29/12/2019, assessment was completed, adding the said sum after discussion with the counsel of the assessee. Counsel of the assessee did not raise the issue that no notice under section 143(2) was issued. Now take this situation. The notice was issued on 29/3/2019. What is the limitation period for issuing a notice under section 148? Assessment year was 1415. So 1415 plus 4 years, that is 31st March 2019 will cover the case, because the assessment was completed under 143(3). So the first proviso to section 147 would apply, and considering this, the last date would be 31st March 2019. Now the first issue, the notice was received on 4/4/2019. Whether a valid notice has been served upon the assessee? Now to this we have to remember section 149. What it says? The time limit is with respect to issue of notice. So as soon as the notice has been dispatched from the officer, that is, it is beyond the control of the officer to take back that notice. It is deemed as if the notice has been issued, because there is a difference in the words of 149 and 143(2). In 143(2), there is a requirement of service of the notice. That is, the notice should have been received by the assessee before 30th September of that assessment year. But here in 149, the notice must be issued. And in various judicial decisions, it has been held that notice is said to be issued when it is beyond the control of the assessing officer to take back that notice. And it is when? It is when it is handed over to the postal authorities. So on 29/3/2019, the assessing officer has sent the letter to the postal department, so the notice is said to be valid. So we cannot contest that the notice was not issued in time. First. Now, no notice under section 143(2) was issued. Why is this important? When 148 has been issued, why are we talking about 143(2) to be issued? When the return of income was filed in response to a notice under section 148, section 148 subsection 1 says, it says when a return is filed in response to this notice, the return should be processed as if the return has been filed in response to notice under section 139. So now it will be treated as a return filed under section 139. So what do we do when a return is filed under section 139? A notice under section 143(2) is issued. 143(2) says when a return is filed under section 139 or under 142(1), a notice under section 143(2) has to be issued. If the assessing officer wish to inquire, wish to assess the income, wish to have further queries from the assessee, he has to issue 143(2). And this view has been fortified. Now this view is not the mere view of the professionals. This view is the view of the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of ACIT versus Hotel Blue Moon. So whenever an assessee, in response to a notice under section 148 or 153A, files a return of income. If the assessing officer wants to make some addition, or wish to make further inquiry, he must issue notice under section 143. Alright. So notice was required to be issued. Here in this case, no notice was issued. On 29/12/2019, assessment was completed. Okay, assessment completed, did not raise the issue. And assessee council of assessee did not raise an issue with the assessing officer that you have not issued 143(2), then you are completing the assessment. So what to do? Can assessee or the council of assessee raise a ground that no notice under section 143(2) was issued? Therefore, since no notice was issued, therefore the proceeding is invalid. Can he make such a ground of appeal? Can he take such a plea before the before the appellate authorities when he has not raised the issue with the assessing officer? Now, to answer this query, we must know section 292(2). It is true, since 143(2) has not been issued in the case of the assessee, it is true that assessment proceedings are liable to be quashed. But for that, whether the assessee would be allowed to take such a plea when he has not raised an objection before the assessing officer? Now let's visit section 292(b). What it says: where an assessee has appeared in any proceeding or cooperated in any inquiry relating to an assessment or reassessment, it shall be deemed that a notice under any provisions of this act which is required to be served, remember, which is required to be served upon him, has been duly served upon him in time. So in our situation, assessee has appeared, assessee has cooperated. So what it says, it would be deemed as if the notice has been duly served upon him. Okay. He will not be allowed, what the further section says, assessee shall not be precluded from taking any objection that the proceedings or under this act, that notice was not served upon him in time or in improper manner. However, the proviso says he will be allowed to raise this plea only if he has raised such objection. The purpose behind this section is that merely on technical grounds which has not caused any prejudice to the assessee, how the assessee will not be allowed to take such a plea before an appellate authority. What it says, notice was not served upon you in time or in proper manner, but you appeared before the authority, you cooperated with the authority, you presented documents, and the assessing officer is not satisfied, and merely because of a procedural lapse, substantive provision, what is substantive provision? The levy of tax cannot be quashed. Only in such a, what this proviso says, you will be allowed to raise a query only if you have raised such a query before the assessing officer. When you will raise this query before the assessing officer, he will have the time to remedy the defect. Alright. If he does not have the time to remedy the defect, then it is alright. Then you can take the plea and the assessing officer would be forced by the appellate authority to quash his assessment proceeding. That is a different issue. But the logic is very clear that for merely technical reasons, the assessment proceeding should not be quashed. Now, when we come back to our example, whether 148 was received by us, yes, we can take a plea. We cannot take a plea that of section 292(b). Now, when it comes to section 143(2), whether notice under section 143(2) was served upon us, it was not even issued. It was evident from the order sheet that assessing officer has not issued 143(2) in response to the return of income filed in response to notice under section 148. So, remember here the highlighted words, duly served upon him. This section only says if something has been issued, that is the first line of when I began this case law. What was the first line? Issued will be when it has been sent out to the postal officer. That is, it is beyond the control of the assessing officer to take back that letter. It is only at that time it will be said it is issued, not before that. If assessing officer signs a letter and keeps it into his file, that will not be called issued. Issued means it must be handed over to a postal officer. It must be properly named, properly addressed, properly stamped and handed over to the postal officer. Only then, if all these conditions are satisfied, only then it will be said that the notice has been issued. Here the notice was not issued. Now the assessing officer is claiming for the authority that bar, stop the assessee from taking the plea that no notice has been served upon him. Why? Because he has cooperated and he has not raised such an objection before the assessing officer. If had he raised the objection, I would have issued 143(2). So stop him from taking this plea, because he has made me believe that this notice was not required. But is there any estoppel against law? There can be estoppel against the conduct, but there cannot be any estoppel against the law. So here the Honorable Supreme Court in Lakshman Das Khandelwal says the section 292(d) only covers the situation where there has been any defect in service. It does not cure irregularity. It cures only irregularity. It does not cure illegality whereby a notice was not even issued. Are you getting it? So the assessee would not be barred from taking the plea that notice was not issued, 143(2), and following the decision of ACIT versus Hotel Blue Moon, the assessment proceedings are required to be quashed. They will not be remanded back because it is such a defect which cannot be cured at the appellate stage. Okay. Now we come to situation B. What the situation B says: notice under section 148 was not even received by the SEC. Thereafter, AO issued notice under section 142 and requiring the SEC to comply with the notice under section 148. This notice was also not received by the SEC and returned unserved, as these notices were not properly addressed. Now, on searching the ITBA module, AO means assessing officer, came across the new address. AO issued show cause notice under section 272A subsection 1 clause D, proposing a penalty of rupees 10,000 at the new address. This notice was the first notice to be received by the SEC. Now the situation is clear. The notice of 148 was not received. Notice of 142(1) requiring the SEC to comply with the notice under section 148 was also not received. However, why they were not received? Because the address on that envelope was not proper. So if you want to assess Vaibhav Goyal, you have to issue notice to Vaibhav Goyal's address. You are writing the name of Vaibhav Goyal and sending it to the address of Vinay Goyal. How will it reach Vaibhav Goyal? Okay, so it cannot be said. Writing the name of Vaibhav Goyal, writing the address of the Vinay Goyal, you cannot say that notice has been issued to Vaibhav Goyal. It is clear. So only notice under section 272 capital A 1D which was issued to Vaibhav Goyal was received by Vaibhav Goyal. Okay. In response to that notice, assessee replied. What did he reply? That he had not received the previous notices and he agreed to cooperate. Okay. When he agreed, how did he agree to cooperate? He took the notice, copy of 148 notice. He filed the reply in the form of return of income against 148, and 143(2) was issued. Everything happened, and then the assessing officer concluded that you have escaped the income, and he made the assessment. Now, whether he can take a plea before the appellate authorities that notice under section 148 was not received by him, or whether it is a case of non-issuance. Firstly, we have to decipher these two things before we will. Then we will go whether what plea should assessee take before the appellate authorities. Whether it is a case of non-issuance or whether it is a case of a non-service. Firstly, it is a case of non-issuance. Why? Because the address was not properly written on the envelope. When the address was not properly written in the envelope, it cannot be said the notice has been issued. I will recall those three conditions. What are the three conditions to hold that the notice has been issued? Properly named, properly addressed, properly stamped. These three conditions are very important, and it handed over to the postal officer. so that it is beyond the control of the assessing officer. Now, since the notices will be issued through ITBA module, so it will be read with section 13 of the Information Technology Act. And what does section 13 of the Information Technology Act says? It will be issued when it leaves the computer resource of the assessing officer. Now it is a matter of dispute whether putting into the e-filing account of the SSE is outside the computer resource of the department or not. We will not be dwelling upon that controversy in this lecture series, but we will discuss in some other series. So coming back to our case, so since the envelope was not properly addressed, we cannot say it was issued. So whether SSE would be precluded because he has appeared, he has cooperated, and yet he has not raised an objection. Firstly, he has raised an objection. He has circumscribed his reply that he has not received the notice. It is in the form of an objection, merely writing or addressing it as an objection. Instead of circumscribing it as an objection, he replied is in reply. So it will be treated as an objection. Even if he had not objected, he could have taken the plea that the notice under section 148 has not been issued. See, and the burden of proof when he would have taken such a plea, he would have to discharge the initial burden. That is, he should have inspected the file, the envelope, or the evidence which he can give. Though the burden is always on the revenue when it comes to whether the notice has been served in time or not, whether it has been issued or not, it is always the burden on the revenue. However, it is a general practice that SSE has to discharge some initial burden so that the judges or the appellate authority can think of a situation where it has not been issued in time. So in our case A, case 1, situation B, case 1, SSE can take a plea. Both pleas, that it was notice under section 140 was neither issued as well as not served upon him in time. Because service wala he can take, why? Because SSE has replied to the notice that no notice has been issued. Another case 2, no reply was furnished to him, furnished in response to the notice. He did not furnish any reply. He came and started cooperating. So whether he can take, again, he can take the plea of non-issuance, and this plea is, there cannot be any struggle against the law. What is the law? That notice before assessing a person under section 147, a notice under section 148 should be issued, and this is not even cured by section 292BB. What is cured 292BB? Only defect in service. So what does Lakshman Das Khandelwal says? When a notice even under section 148 or 153A, a return has been filed, and a notice under section 143(2) was required to be issued in response to that notice, and when that notice has not been issued, section 292BB does not cure that defect. Clear? Now we will move on to the next case, and our next case is PCIT versus Maruti Suzuki Limited. So we must understand this case because it tends to clear certain doubts which was there in the minds of the department when Skylight Hospitality's case came into light. You would be remembering that Skylight Hospital case. It is there in the select case laws. So, what are the facts of this case? Who was SSE? SPIL. And there was a joint venture between SMC and SMIL. These two companies made a joint venture, SPIL. Who was the SSE? Who was the SSE? SPIL. SPIL filed its return of income on 28th November 2019. I have changed the date so that it can suit the current examination system. Okay. These are not the actual date as per the facts of the case, but these dates have been amended so that it suits the current examination pattern. On 29th January 2020, a scheme of amalgamation was approved by NCLT. In that case, it was approved by the High Court, but since the company law has been changed and now it has to be approved by NCLT, so I have written NCLT. So under NCLT, under section 232 of the Companies Act, and from which date the approval was given? From 1st of April 2019. For which assessment year the SSE had filed the return? For assessment year 1920, and the amalgamation is effective from financial year 1920. Alright. And the fact that amalgamation has taken place was informed on 2nd April 2020 to the assessing officer. Alright. And then on 26 September 2020, AO issued notice in the name of SPIL. That is the amalgamating company under section 143(2), because return has been filed by the SPIL in 28th November 2019. Now on receipt of the notice, officers and authorized representative of MSIL participated in the proceeding and raised no objection about the fact that notice was issued in the name of amalgamating and non-existent company. Remember this fact, because this fact will help us to understand two sections, 292B and 292BB, both. We have heard 292BB before. Now we will be looking how this 292B and 292BB has an interplay together. Assessing officer was finalized on 30th September 2021 in the name of SPIL. Now what is the important point to decipher here is the notice was issued only in the name of SPIL. Alright, but the order was completed in the name of SPIL, now MSIL. There were other facts related to transfer pricing, but since the controversy does not relate to them, the controversy was relating to the name per se, so I am limiting the facts to those relevant facts. Alright. Now SSC challenged the validity. Why did the SSC challenge the validity of the final assessment order? Because it was finalized in the name of SPIL, which is a non-existent company. Remember the case of Spice Infrastructure. In the case of Spice Infrastructure, it was held that the assessing officer cannot issue the notice as well as complete the assessment in the name of a non-existent company. Similar is the case with the dead people. Whenever an assessment has to be made on a dead person, remember, person, he is no more a person. So it has to be completed only by issuing notices and completing assessment only in the name of the legal heirs. Until and unless the notice has been given to the legal heirs, it cannot be completed. Similarly is the case with the companies. Company amalgamate, the amalgamating company loses identity. You would have remembered in the company law, one of the sections says the company is said to be dissolved. That is no more in existence. When a company is no more in existence, can you give a notice to such a company? Who will come? Notice should be issued to the company who takes over that company. So that proper hearing. Here the proper hearing was there, but notice was not issued in the name of the new company, but it was given in the name of non-existent company. And the assessment order was completed not in the name of the new company, but name of the old company, now MSIL. So SSC challenged that the order is vitiated on this count. However, the department plea was that they said, firstly, the defect is curable under section 292B. What does 292B says? 292B says when there is a defect or a mistake, it can be cured. It is curable. For that, it is a mere irregularity. It is not an illegality. And what is the difference between irregularity and illegality? Illegality makes an assessment void ab initio. That is invalid from the very beginning. And what is the difference of irregularity? So whenever an appellate authority comes across that an irregularity has crept in, what they will say? Wherever an irregularity has crept in, remand back the case to that place where the irregularity has crept in. You don't need to quash the assessment. You don't need to hold it that it is invalid. Just remand back, and the proceedings should begin after curing those irregularities. So what does 292B says? If any irregularity happens, you don't need to quash it. If, only when, if in substance and effect, it is in conformity with the intent and the purpose of this act. Right. And this is the notice was required to be issued. Notice was issued. Only fact that it was to be issued in the name of MSIL. It was issued in the name of SPIL, and it has caused no prejudice to the SSC, as the officers of MSIL came, and it was very well known to the MSIL that it was a notice meant to them. So to support this contention, department said, remember the Skylight Hospitality case? In this Skylight Hospitality LLP case, the Skylight Hospital Private Limited was converted into an LLP. Notice was required under section 148 to Skylight Hospital LLP because Private Limited has no more in existence. However, the assessing officer issued notice in the name of Skylight Hospitalities Private Limited. The issue was whether this notice under section 148 was valid. The Honorable Delhi High Court said it is valid. Why? Because the reasons to believe, the basis on which notice under section 148 was issued, purely documented that the notice was meant for Skylight Hospitals LLP for the transaction undertaken by Skylight Hospitals Private Limited. And this name was not a jurisdictional error, it was a mere defect which can be cured under section 292B. So here the department said similar is the case. How is it similar is the case? The notice was required to be issued in MSIL. We instead gave in SPIL. Alright. How the department tried to similarize those two conditions. We will see how the department's attempt was not accepted by the judiciary. The Honorable Supreme Court distinguished this case. How we will see it in the later part of our discussion. Now another plea was no prejudice has been caused to the assessee because it is a mere technicalities. Now to support this contention, they refer to the case of Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Jayaprakash Singh. I was talking about the dead person's case. No, this was a dead person's case, Jayaprakash Singh. It was a father. There was a dispute, assessment regarding father. Father was no more. The notice was issued to one of the legal heirs. There were 4 or 5 legal heirs. Instead of 4 or 5 legal heirs, notice was issued in the name of one. Assessment was completed in the name of all the 5 or 4 or 5 legal heirs, and the matter went up to the Supreme Court. The issue was whether it is an irregularity or illegality. The Honorable Supreme Court said, firstly, we will distinguish it later. Okay. Okay. So in that case, it was held as an irregularity, not an illegality. So that what did the court held in that case? The service of notice is a procedural provision, and a non-service would not erase the liability to pay tax. However, the proceedings would at most be irregular and not void. What is the effect of irregularity? It would be remanded back to the place where the irregularity has crept in. Alright. So, department was thinking that these two cases of the Honorable Supreme Court is in their favor, which says that it is a mere procedural irregularity. But this was not taken well by the judiciary. How? Now let's read section 170 subsection 2. First, what it says, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, when the predecessor cannot be found. How the predecessor cannot be found? Because the amalgamating company has merged in the new company, so and it has been deemed to have been dissolved. When it is dissolved, the predecessor is no longer there. So when our predecessor is not available, so it can be said it cannot be found because it is no more in existence. The assessment of the income of the previous year in which the succession took place up to the date of succession and of the previous year preceding that year shall be made on the successor. So what it says, in respect of the income which you wish to assess in the hands of the predecessor, you assess in the hands of the successor as if the assessment was required to be made in the hands of the predecessor. Alright, so this section also clearly says the notice as well as the machinery provisions of this act was to be applied with respect to the successor. Alright, so first down, second, as I said, notice can be issued only to a person, and when an amalgamating ceases to exist, it cannot be regarded as a person. Okay. And the Honorable Supreme Court distinguished Skylight Hospitals LLP on the ground that the decision given in Skylight Hospitalities LLP was particular to the facts of that case. That is, the notice was intended to be issued in the name of successor entity. The PAN of the successor entity was also quoted on various documents. in Skylight Hospitalities LLP, nowhere the judiciary has said or the judicial dicta has said that issuance of notice is not a jurisdictional error. It was there, but in these particular facts and circumstances of the case, what were the facts and circumstances of the case? That the bedrock of notice under section 142 was that the fact of Skylight Hospitality Private Limited as well as Skylight Hospitality LLP was available in the reasons to believe. Here, notice under section 143(2) was issued in the name of a non-existent company, which is not a mere procedural violation but a substantive illegality. Because whenever an assessment has to be made, the assessing officer has to assume jurisdiction. How he assumes jurisdiction? By issuing notices. And what are those notices? R148 or 143(2) or 153A or various other notices given in the Act. Majorly these are 3 or 4 types of. Alright. So now we have distinguished Skylight. They have not undone the decision given in Skylight Hospitalities LLP. Only they have distinguished. Why they have distinguished? That the decision given in Skylight Hospitality LLP would be applied only on those particular situations. The decision given in that case cannot be held to be a ratio for the ratio, meaning that it cannot be held as a precedent for as generalized. It is a precedent, but it is only a precedent only in respect of those particular set of facts and circumstances. And in the present phase, in the case of Maruti Suzuki Udyog Limited, it is not applicable. The decision of Skylight Hospitality LLP. Now the departments, another, that Jayaprakash Singh case. The honorable judges said in the Jayaprakash Singh case there was irregularity. Why? The notice under section 143(2) or 148 was required to be issued to 5 legal heirs, but it was issued to at least 1. And he did not object that the notice under section 143(2) was not issued to other legal heirs. It is only when the assessing officer completed the assessment in the name of all of the 5 without issuing notices to other legal heirs, it is when the irregularity crept in. And this is distinguishable as here in the case, had the assessing officer issued notice to SPIL, had the assessing officer issued notice to MSIL, both, then it would have been covered. But here the assessing officer has issued only in the name of SPIL, which was a non-existent entity. So this way Honorable Supreme Court distinguished Jayaprakash Singh case as well. Now the another plea was that assessee has participated, no prejudice has caused to him, so this should act as an estoppel. We read the rule of estoppel under section 292BB. What was this? Assessee would be stopped from taking the plea that notice was not served to him in time or in proper manner or was not served him at all if he participates and cooperates. So he participated, he cooperated. So what is the prejudice? That means this could act as an estoppel, and the department's case is fairly covered under section 292BB. What's your take? No, because here the notice was not said to be issued. Again, three things. It should be issued in the proper name. It was not issued in the proper name, so it cannot be said as if a notice has been issued, and there cannot be any estoppel against the law. What only if it was a matter relating to service, it can act as an estoppel. Why? Because a statutory estoppel has been created. Alright. With respect to issuance, no estoppel has been created in the law. So even if assessee has not objected during the assessment proceedings, it can be said the assessee is free to take the plea before the appellate authorities, and not only free, the judgment can be given against the department that the assessment proceeding was null and void or illegal or requires the proceeding as the case. So I was using the term estoppel. Do you know the meaning of the term estoppel? Estoppel means when A, by his act, declaration or omission, intentionally allows or permits B to believe something to be true and to act upon such a belief. A cannot be allowed to deny the truth of that thing. Meaning thereby, I claim to B that this is my property, though it is not my property. This property belongs to my father, but this I claim to B that this is my property, and B pays consideration for purchase of this property, and I profess to say B, you buy this property for this much consideration. B pays me that amount. Now B comes to know that this property is not mine. This property is of my father. Now my father gives the property to me. Now can I contend to be that when I made a contract with you, this property was not mine? So I am not going to convey this property or give the possession to you. So this is not going to be the case. So similarly, this law of estoppel, how is it applicable in this present facts and circumstances? It is that here the court suggests that MSIL, by participating in the proceeding, cannot be denied the statutory right to contest, because section 292 BB cures only service, not issuance.